Hi, welcome aboard. You know, one of the marvellous things about having World of Boats and Leisure as a television show is that it gives me a chance to tell you about and to publicise my favourite hobby, and that's flying. And this little aeroplane which you've glimpsed over the last year or two on the show is about 50 hours from being completed, and I'm really looking forward to finishing her off and test flying her. Now, about 3 months ago, I asked on the show for people to write in and tell me the subjects that they would like to see on World of Boats. Now, to my great gratification, we got a lot of letters from people wishing to see more tourism and travel and general leisure on the show. And I got about 35 letters from people who wanted to see more about little aircraft. Now, I'm more than delighted to comply with that for several reasons. Firstly, the one I've stated, it's nice to tell you about my favourite hobby. And secondly, ultralight aircraft, or light sport aircraft as they should be referred to, have received quite a lot of adverse publicity. In fact, a lot of sensationalistic publicity, both in print and particularly on television, has been applied to these little aeroplanes, and as a result the general public's attitude towards them is somewhat negative. Now, that reputation is not deserved, it's not even earned. The safety record of these aircraft statistically is substantially better than that of most other mild venture sports and even of general aviation. They're quite remarkably good, reliable, safe little aircraft. Now, the trouble is, people do get hurt in venture sports, in any kind of venture sport. But unfortunately, as far as aircraft is concerned, and ultralight aircraft, the press really sort of fall upon the slightest incident and blow it up out of proportion. And I must admit to being thoroughly sick and tired of hearing that these aircraft are powered by converted lawnmower engines, which seems to be a catchphrase with the press. And let me lay that one to rest right now. They are simply not powered by converted lawnmower engines. They're powered by sophisticated 2- or 4-stroke engines which are designed specifically for the purpose, but enough of that. Now, the ultralight movement has been going in this country for about 12 or 13 years. It's had a very interesting history, and in most cases Australia has led the rest of the world in ultralight technology. We've come up with a range of aircraft which is superior to most of the aircraft from other countries, and we've done it sooner than other countries, mainly because our conditions demand a certain type of aircraft, and our designers and builders have come up with aircraft such as this one which fulfil those demands. Now, for the next half hour or so, we're going to have a look at the history of ultralight aircraft in Australia, a brief look at that, and we're going to look in detail at the activities and at the products of one of Australia's most prominent current aircraft manufacturers, Howard Hughes from Ballina, who builds the Lightwing range of ultralight and small training aircraft. Let's go flying. I guess it's true to say that the ultralight movement worldwide grew from hang gliding, which sprang up as a popular sport in the late 1960s. Many enthusiasts found themselves without easy access to a slope, so they experimented with small power units which gave their aircraft a self-launch capability. This led to the development of scaled-down conventional aircraft which used the hang glider power packs, and the ultralight movement was born. The little aircraft captured the imagination of aviation enthusiasts and inventors worldwide, and these people set about reinventing the aeroplane. It's been remarkable, in fact, to watch the first 40 years or so of the history of light aviation being reenacted over a period of 15 years, with a great added advantage of modern materials and power units to help the aircraft along. A world leader in this was Ron Wheeler of Sydney. His Skycraft Scout was an inspired combination of aerodynamic theory combined with, of all things, sailing dinghy technology to produce an extremely viable little flying machine. And in fact, Air Navigation Order 9510, which was written for the Scout by the Department of Aviation in Australia, was the first piece of legislation of its type in the world. It soon became obvious, however, that the Scout and her imported contemporaries, mainly from America, whilst they were excellent basic flying machines, lacked the qualities needed for an aircraft suitable for Australian conditions. We have pretty rugged weather here, we need to cover long distances, and our paddocks and fields are rough, so a breed of locally designed ultralights was gradually developed to answer these demands. These aeroplanes are excellent flying machines. In fact, they're among the best light sport aircraft in the world, and their designers have managed to come up with airframes which are extremely strong and rugged, but which still perform well with moderate horsepowers of around about 40 to 60. One of the major problems which arose as a result of all this was that the requirement for strength and ruggedness meant that the aircraft became heavier and exceeded the weight allowed for in the Department of Aviation's rules. The department was reluctant to change the rules, and this led to a period of conflict between the movement and the department. The Australian Ultralight Federation was formed in the early 80s to help handle this, and after a very stormy beginning, they've settled down to the task of administering the movement nationwide and dealing with the Department of Aviation and the government. The third draft of Air Navigation Order 9510 has recently been issued, and whilst it still leaves some areas of contention, it forms the basis for the advancement of the movement and allows the hundreds and hundreds of so-called overweight aircraft, which have been flying quite happily for up to 10 years, to fly legally. The current situation is that an individual or a small group of individuals may design, build and fly an aircraft, providing that that aircraft doesn't exceed 150 kilos in empty weight, and that whoever flies it, that is the designer, builder or the group, must hold an Australian Ultralight Federation pilot's certificate. Now, you can't sell the aircraft, which is one of the difficult areas within the rules, and the existing so-called overweight aircraft are able to fly legally within the new air navigation orders. One of the great difficulties encountered in the early days was that it wasn't possible to legally train new pilots because approval for the operation of two-seat trainers was not forthcoming from the Department of Aviation. This meant that firstly, training had to be conducted outside the letter of the law, and secondly, many hundreds of newcomers to the sport were forced to train themselves. In fact, this led to an aviation phenomenon. As a result of this ridiculous legal situation, there are more self-taught aviators in the world today than at any other time in history, and this is directly attributable to the docile and forgiving nature of the aircraft themselves. Now, recently legislation was introduced which allowed two-seat training aircraft to be designed, built and operated, and the Ultralight Federation came up with a set of rules which allowed people to be qualified as instructors, and as a result of that, there are now flying schools in all major areas, which allows an individual to go to the flying school, spend around about $1,500 and come away fully qualified to fly an ultralight aircraft and holding an Australian Ultralight Federation issued pilot certificate. Now, we'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back. You know, Australia is a far-flung country, and in the 20s and 30s and 40s, we relied on aviation almost 100% to reach our remote areas easily. So we really are a nation which has been involved in aviation almost since the inception of aviation itself. And of course, we've contributed some historical figures of great renown to world history in the form of Bert Hinkler, Sir Charles Kingsford Smith, and others. But unfortunately, in spite of that, manufacturing of aircraft in Australia has never had a very happy history. In fact, the Victor organisation, which built an aircraft designed by Henry Millicer, an Australian, in the mid-60s, had to close the facility down, and the design rights and the tooling were sold to New Zealand, and then the Australian government spent millions of dollars to buy aircraft back from New Zealand. Now, it's a difficult environment in which to work. I asked Howard Hughes why he got started.
That's a very interesting question, Chris. Possibly drawn to it by the name, although I doubt it. I was certainly playing with model aeroplanes long before I was aware of the famous American, and I guess I started building model aeroplanes when I was perhaps 9 or 10. I used to build one a week and crash it on the weekends.
Yes,
on the control lines.
Same thing.
Yeah, I went into boats and then we just somehow or other got involved with hang gliding many years ago when my daughter was born, about 14 years ago, and we simply went from there. We moved to Ballina and did more hang gliding, and then decided that we'd stick engines on them and did all that. And then some good friends of ours were bringing in American aircraft, and we had a bit of a look at them and flew them, and we decided they were really wonderful, but we also decided for once that probably we could do a slightly better job than the Americans, which I think succeeded in doing, and we basically took it from there. Correct.
Now
Yeah.
what about the actual construction of the aircraft?
It's the Lightwing is a fairly old design in many respects. You could say possibly it was designed around just after the Second World War. The concept of steel frame, actually before that.
Early 30s. So.
Yeah, early 30s. All we've done really with that concept is lighten it and use the two-stroke motor. And now we're going back to the four-stroke motor. So the general concept is high tensile steel and aluminium with a fabric covering, and it's pretty much a tried and true.
Because we're talking about Piper Cub, we're talking about de Havilland Tiger Moth,
Yes.
and many other famous aircraft that I can name. In fact, certain components of the Spitfire were built in exactly that way. So
right.
it's a tried and proven construction method, but you also have incorporated some modern technology and materials in using fiberglass, haven't you?
That's right, yeah. We have a number of non-structural fiberglass components.
Howard, you've got quite an elaborate computer there. You've obviously got all of your design integrated into the computer.
Yep, the whole of the excuse me, the design package is stored on floppy disks rather than the old drawing cabinet and ink pen system. We use a mouse, and the computer's able to do quite a lot of the complex calculations involved in the design of the aircraft.
Right. Now that leads me to the other question. You're supplying aircraft in two basic forms. One is a flyaway, and the other one is in a kit form, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
How does the kit work?
The kit is, we're basically looking at a quick build kit for the amateur constructor. Again, for that market, a group of people who haven't perhaps ever thought about building an aircraft before. So it's an assembly kit. You don't have to weld anything, you don't have to use tin snips or cut very much. The leading edge of the wing is built for you, and the fuselage cage is fully welded and painted. So it's basically a process of assembling a large number of components into the aircraft, and we're looking at about, so we're trying to produce a kit that somebody can build in their part-time in under a year.
Right, so you're looking at what, say 300 to 500 hours of
That's
spare time over a period of a year, which is quite easy to get. It's only 10 hours a week, really.
Yes,
Isn't it?
yeah. And the wing, the D-spar of the wing is built, so a lot of the complex work, in fact all of the complex technical work is done for
All the structural work.
Yeah. Fabric covering and painting is I think enjoyable.
Yes.
And it's simply a matter of being able to use a drill, a pop rivet, or a pair of scissors. Pretty basic sort of simple
That's right.
skills.
And you've got a full set of drawings which come out of the computer, CAD-CAM computer, which of course go to the kit builder, and he uses those drawings as a reference to
Yes.
to put the kit together.
Yeah, they're a three-dimensional drawing which just goes through the whole thing step by step.
Because Howard, you and I know something that people who haven't designed and built an aircraft don't know, and that is the fact that even though you might spend 500 hours of spare time at it, it's a pleasurable thing to do, and at the end of it you've created something which actually flies and which you can fly yourself. Now that gives a man a measure of himself and gives him a tremendous amount of personal satisfaction.
Yeah, I think we're doing it all the time, but every time a new aircraft goes out you look at it as being something almost that has a personality.
It does, yeah.
And airplanes are fairly personal things. People give them names and paint them nice colours. I think they have a far greater personality than a car ever would.
There's that bonding of man and machine, and it's not only that, it's the fact that we'll never sprout wings from our shoulders, but through your hands and your feet and your eyes and the seat of your pants, you actually do become a part of the machine, more so than any other machine.
I think that's exactly right. It's and that's the skill of flying. I think is learning that use of your body and balance, weight and balance, and so on.
And remarkably, it comes naturally to most people.
Yes, I think it does. Just about everybody that we've been involved with learning to fly has mastered it in 10 to 15 hours.
Yeah.
Nobody's taken it on, to the best of my knowledge, more than about 15 hours of dual
to go solo.
instructions. But then compare that to when you had to drive a car and manage traffic for the first time, then it's about the same, and the skill is no more difficult or complex.
It's no more difficult to acquire.
Yeah.
Welcome back. The process of reinventing the aeroplane for the second time around has culminated in types such as the Lightwing. Now, you can't really refer to these aircraft as ultralights. They have much more in common with the little aeroplanes which opened up the skies in the mid-1930s and incidentally trained the pilots who did so very well on both sides in the Second World War. Names such as Piper, de Havilland, Oster, Stinson and Fairchild, among many others, brought personal aviation within the reach of the average man, to the extent where we now see light aircraft serving business and commerce on a daily basis. But the recent history of general aviation, the Cessnas, Beechcraft and Learjets, etc., has meant that an enthusiast of average means is unable to afford the price of participation. The hardware isn't prohibitively expensive, but because of the regulations, the cost of a general aviation pilot's licence and maintenance and insurance of the aircraft is way beyond the reach of someone who wants to fly recreationally or to use the vehicle in a casual business sense. Now, there is an ongoing demand for this type of flying, and the ultralight movement, culminating in the Lightwing, has brought the aviation movement back to the grassroots level. Now, you can become a qualified pilot for a reasonable figure, say under $2,000, and you can buy or assemble your two-seat aeroplane for around the cost of a new car, or the average family size runabout or half-cabin boat powered by, say, a 200 horsepower outboard. So it's not prohibitively expensive, and a lot of people tend to feel that aircraft are expensive simply inherently and by nature, and that really is not true. Now, you can maintain it yourself and you can fly it for a total cost of around, say, $20 to $30 an hour. So what do you do with it then? Well, let's look at the practical aspects first. Say you're a small businessman who travels within a radius of 500 kilometres from home regularly. You can combine business with pleasure and save a lot of time and incidentally money by using the Lightwing. And if you're a farmer, here's the perfect farm support vehicle. In fact, the equivalent of an aerial motorbike. Check the fences or dams, muster the sheep or bring the cattle in, and check the lambs. In the rainy season, it could be the only means to inspect the property, and it's rugged and powerful enough to be able to handle short, rough landing areas. The fishing industry's been using ultralights for fish spotting for many years now, and they're a marvellous alternative to the helicopter for beach patrol and search and rescue duties at a fraction of the purchase and operating costs. But I guess up until now, the major use for aircraft such as this has been in the training mode, and ultralights such as the Lightwing have been responsible for introducing a whole new generation of people to basic grassroots flying, and it really is a marvellous way to do it. In fact, quite a few of the people who've learnt to fly in the Lightwing have gone on to become charter and subsequently airline pilots. But the primary purpose of these marvellous little machines is fun and recreation. Put wings on a Porsche and you've got a Lightwing. Join a flying club and share the fun, or best of all, fit a pair of floats and combine the best of both worlds, flying and boating. There's room for a small tent and fishing gear, and all of a sudden you can easily reach remote fishing and cruising areas, and every river or lake becomes your runway and playground. Another interesting aspect of the Lightwing is that, in common with most ultralights, including mine here, it's possible to remove the wings. Now that means it takes about half an hour to take the wings off and about a half an hour to put them back on again. And that opens up a whole new scope of use for the aircraft, because it means that you can rig up a trailer so it carries the fuselage either on floats or on wheels, and the wings on racks down either side of the trailer, and you can tow your aeroplane around on its trailer the way you tow your boat around. So you can tow it by road to remote airfields for a fly-in or whatever, or to start your particular little touring weekend from that point. It saves a lot of fuel, saves a lot of time, and it means that you can cart all your support gear along as well. Now, you don't really need much of that. The aircraft are relatively independent. They use automotive fuel in the two strokes, so that makes them easy to fuel. You're not relying on aviation gasoline and that sort of thing. So it gives you a similar degree of utility to that you experience with a boat, whether you operate it on wheels or, of course, on floats. It generally takes two people to assemble the aircraft, get it off the trailer and assemble it. But then again, it'll carry two people, so your passenger can give you a hand to put the aircraft together. Now, we'll be back right after this break. Welcome back. showing you the show on the Lightwing and on general ultralights today has really given me a bit of incentive to get busy and finish off this little aircraft. I guess one of the main reasons that we put today's show together, apart from the interest and the action and the beautiful footage, of course, that aircraft will always give, is the fact that I've been concerned for quite a long time about the fact that the general public have a negative attitude toward light aviation, and I've never really quite been able to understand that. I remember years ago a protest group stopping an airfield being built on the northern end of Sydney on the grounds of environmental impact. Well, if there's any vehicle that integrates beautifully with nature, it's little aeroplanes. Rabbits and cows and sheep and horses tend to totally ignore them. And the nice thing about them is that whilst they do make a degree of noise, they're no noisier than a lawnmower next door, and they go away. They go away at 80 or 90 miles an hour, so the noise isn't around for very long. They do develop character in kids. I certainly like to think that my involvement with aviation when I was a teenager kept me off the streets and kept me busy building model aeroplanes, and gave me the sort of technological background that enables me to produce world debates in the way we do each week and enable me to understand the way mechanical things work. And of course, knowledge of anything mechanical can be applied to almost anything else. So do something for me. Next time a little aeroplane flies over the top and the pilot waves, wave back instead of making rude signs at him. And if somebody drops in and you have a property that's suitable for operations, suitable as a little airstrip, when he asks, can he operate off your place, say yes rather than no. But the biggest thing you can do is to check it out, find out what it's all about, and join me in one of the greatest hobbies and sports known to man, aviation. That wraps us for another week.